It's Pup Twigs here for a special edition of Unleashed. It's for our Pride edition. And joining me today, all the way from the United Kingdom, is Pup Luca. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good, Pup Twigs. How are you?
I am doing really good. Always good to get other pups from the UK. I love talking to you guys, so it's amazing. So this whole podcast that we're doing now is all about, Pride, which is coming up in the month of June, and what it means to each one of us. And I just want to find out, how do you personally define pride?
That's a really interesting question. And so for me, there's been this debate that I've kind of been part of with my friends over the years, with my husband. Is Pride a party or is Pride a protest, right? And the history of Pride is it started as a protest.
Hmm.
Now, when you go to Pride, it feels like a party. But actually, for me, it has to be and always will be both, right? It started as a party, let's face it. There was celebrations on the streets from day one. Yeah, okay, there was the Stonewall riots, which you could say was the start of Pride. But we have always been a community of celebration. We've always been a community that comes together to have joy and not just to, hold placards. We hold placards with joy. So for me, Pride is a protest, Pride is a party. But more than that, as a pup, Pride is actually an opportunity to come together with other pups. Or if not other pups, then to represent the pup community in places where they may not know about the pup community. So in my local town, we have a Pride, and last year I was the only pup there. And then a couple of months later, I went to a Pride in a nearby city, and there were five of us, right? So that was about community, and my local Pride was about representation. But Pride is a party. I love going because it's entertaining and fun. But Pride is also a protest because we need to say we are here and we're not going anywhere.
That's right, and you're right. It did start as a protest, and I believe we can go and celebrate the protest. I think that's what it's all about, where we finally people saw us, and that's the way it needs to be, and even more now with the type the kind of world that we're in right now. They're trying to take all those rights away again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So what does pride represent to you in terms of your own identity?
So my identity, I'm a gay man. So I'm the G of LGBT. I'm also queer. So I'm also the Q of LGBTQ. And I'm proud to stand as an ally with all of the other letters in the acronym, and all of the identities that are represented by the Q. I stand proudly alongside all of those people. So for me, my identity is as a gay man, but I very much see pride as an opportunity to stand alongside, celebrate, and show allyship to people of other identities. And yet there's more to it because pride is also, as I said, an opportunity to be myself as a pup on the streets of cities around the UK and hopefully in the future in other places too. And there's a brilliant video that I had done of me last year where I was simply walking across the street in a city called Birmingham in the UK, and I'm just walking across a traffic crossing, and just seeing myself in that space, knowing that I was safe because Pride was happening. I felt like I came alive as a pup, and I saw myself almost for the first time as I truly am as a pup. So for me, Pride is about the LGBTQ plus community. Pride is also a really special place for me as a pup as well.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Well, I know pride is huge when you think about it. Are there any aspects of pride that's most important to you?
So yeah, for me, it is really the opportunity to be able to put this on right in public. Now, if you've seen my videos on TikTok or Instagram, you'll know that I'm not shy to put this on in public, and I am, I live my best life as a pup as often as I can. But Pride is a really special moment because it's a time when I don't feel any judgment from those around me. So to create a space in our cities that is completely non-judgmental, to create a moment in time is really powerful for me and really important. And that's why, it isn't just about protest. It isn't just about being a party. It's this formation of community and this it feels like a snapshot of what the world could be like if we all just lived like that every day. And for me, the question is, why on earth don't we? Right? Why on earth
Yes,
don't we live every day like it's Pride?
you're right. People should just leave us alone. If you don't understand it, then, turn the other way and move on.
100%.
Has your understanding of pride evolved over time?
That's a really good question. Yeah, it has. So, I used to just go for the party, definitely. I used to go because, well, I used to live in a city in the north of England called Leeds, and we would have Pride, and it was great because I could go and, the entire street where the gay bars were would become a street party. I'd get drunk, I'd, hook up with some guys plural, same day, why not? And it was great fun. But increasingly, perhaps as I get older, perhaps because of my marriage, my husband is really interested in like LGBTQ plus history. So perhaps it's because of his influence. Perhaps it's because I've become more politically engaged. But for now, when I go to Pride, I feel that I'm making a statement simply by being there. So my presence becomes a political act. And that is definitely an evolution from where I was. And I feel like if more of us go to Pride with that awareness, not necessarily with that as our primary focus, but just knowing that is part of what we're doing, then I think Pride will become what it needs to be as we move forward into these dark times, a really intentional act, an intentional political act that people can't ignore and people can't deny and people can't just claim is a party, but they have to acknowledge what it is, which is a party and a protest.
Yeah. Well, what role does pride play in fostering a sense of community?
It's everything for me. I've some of my best friends from the pub community I met at Gloucester Pride last year, and there were sort of five of us, I think, walking in the Pride parade, and I've become friends with them. I see them at least once a month for a LGBT friendly night in this town over in Gloucestershire, and I wouldn't have found them if it hadn't been for Pride. I simply wouldn't have been in the city that day. We would have walked past each other on the street if it had been, and we wouldn't have known about ourselves because we wouldn't have been in our hoods. So for me, Pride, by forming a space that is safe and by forming a place in time that was safe for us to be ourselves and for
Mhm.
us to be open about who we are, we were able to find each other. And through them, I've then found other communities. So Pride has been formative in my development as a pup and in my engagement in the pup community. I'd say Pride has, and also, my good fortune to have some videos that have done quite well on TikTok. I've been able to connect with lots of pups across the world and across the UK and make community that way. But Pride, those connections that I made at Pride, those senses of community that I made at Pride are so much deeper. And just one other thing, actually, on a slightly different tack, but certainly in the UK, I don't know what it's like in the States and in the rest of the world, but in the UK, increasingly, we're getting smaller prides in smaller towns. So it used to be that if you wanted to go to Pride, you'd go to London or you'd go to Manchester where there's a big gay scene. So you'd go
Mhm.
to places where the gay scene was. Now, what's happening, and this is such a good progressive thing in my view, is that local groups are forming and they're starting their smaller prides. So I went to a pride last year in my local village, in my local town. There were about 300 of us. There was a stage in the of all places in the church grounds, right? And we had Pride in the church grounds. Next year we're doing it in the old castle ruins, which is going to be amazing.
Oh, wow.
I went to a Pride in a village hall last year in Tewkesbury, and these places where well, gay and lesbian and bisexual and trans and queer people, we're there as much as we're in cities. They're just not as many of us. And now we're able to say, we are here too. So in some ways, I feel these smaller prides in smaller communities around the country are more important than the big showy prides, with the floats and the late night parties and stuff. These little prides, which go from sort of 12 o'clock until 5 o'clock, and then you all help clear up at the end, they're the place where we can show that actually we are everywhere. So we're showing our communities that we exist.
And that is so good to hear. I love that all the smaller communities, and we're getting that way here too, but it's not probably as prevalent as it is there.
Mm.
But we're starting to go into more and more smaller communities that are allowing pride get-togethers, which is what we need to show that we're everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, because we are everywhere already, right?
That's
We
right.
just need to be able to show it.
That's
Yeah.
right. Well, how do you think the pride has impacted the LGBTQ plus rights and visibility over the years?
So that's a really interesting question. On the face of it, I think it's made huge improvements, right? And it's there's no doubt in my mind that without Pride, we wouldn't have the freedoms that we have today.
Yeah.
So I feel like Pride has gone a very long way in achieving a lot of the goals it set out to do. I'm a little bit worried about the state of the world right now, for our rights. And my worry is that we haven't gone far enough, quick enough in terms of getting rights, particularly rights for trans people.
Yeah.
Um, and my fear is that we went so far, and what we actually achieved was a lot of rhetoric and a lot of signaling from like corporations, from governments,
Hmm.
around the importance of diversity, around the importance of inclusion. But we haven't gone far enough, and now there seems to have been in our societies, certainly in the US, from what I can see, and in the UK, there feels like there is this kind of reaction, right, and against that kind of rhetoric. And my fear is that because we didn't go as far as we needed to in terms of action, we haven't gone far enough, and we're going to lose some of what we've gained, and perhaps lose more than we had. Does that make sense?
It does, and you're exactly right because we're finding now that with all the diversity and inclusion companies are pulling back on here in the United States, some of the bigger pride parades are now having to do GoFundMe pages to make
Mm.
up the money where those corporations have backed out. Uh,
And that's interesting. I mean, I think it's bad. And I've had a debate with my friend about whether corporations should be involved in Pride, and he believes they shouldn't. I believe they should. The reason I believe they should is, and they should be welcomed, is because they're made up of people too. And they're made up of people like us as much as people who aren't like us, right? And just because the money is coming through a corporation, I don't care where it comes from. If it's going to the right place, then let's get it to the right place, right? If we could rewrite society, then I probably wouldn't write the one we've got, but we can't, right? But the fact that it's now, some of those companies are rolling back and, needing GoFundMe pages, I think what we might find happens is Pride starts to look different, but then that's actually an opportunity, right? Because Pride has become corporate. In my experience,
it
Pride has
has, yeah.
become a thing that is done with gloss on it, right? So it's almost like Pride has become laminated, because there's so much money in it. Whereas it might be nice if we had a big Pride that was a little bit more scrappy, a little bit more like rough around the edges, and a little bit more, what I actually mean is a little bit more community built rather than just something that's put on for us. So I think in the midst of that hardship, particularly the financial hardship for Pride, we might see some challenges this year or maybe next year, but hopefully the organizers and the organizations that organize these will find a way to pivot, and we might find Pride looks different in the future. But I think if it's built by the community, then it'll become stronger as a result.
Yeah,
I'm optimistic.
I do think you're right. Well, what do you hope others understand about Pride when they come out in June to either participate or witness a Pride festival?
So this is an interesting question. I think Pride is for everyone and should be felt to be for everyone. And one of the frustrations that I have every year is when I start seeing this debate, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and I'm sure people who watch this podcast are going to be familiar with, is whether kink should be allowed at Pride, right?
Yeah.
Because Pride is a family event, and for me, Pride should be a family event, and kink should be welcome at Pride. And so I'm getting onto a bit of a soapbox about this. So I'm sort of using that question to speak about this because I think it's really important. But kink has been a Pride since the beginning of Pride, and we were amongst the founders, right, of Pride, right? In
Mhm.
fact, if you go back to pre-1960, anyone who was homosexual would have been classed as a kink, right, or as a deviant. or whatever term you choose to use, whatever slur you'd like to insert there, right? So, pre-1950, you wouldn't have let your kids near a gay person, right? If you knew they were gay, you wouldn't have let your kids near Pride. And because Pride has now changed and become more inclusive and more welcoming of families, which is absolutely amazing, and I'm
Yes.
really glad it has, that does not mean that people can turn around to people wearing a pup hood, or people wearing a gimp mask, or people wearing leather, or people who want to, in my opinion, people who want to show off their nipples should be allowed to show off their nipples at Pride. Because that is a form of inclusion. It's a form of inclusion of people's interests, of people's kinks, of people's expression of their sexuality. And Pride, ultimately, in my view, is an expression of identity, but that identity is intrinsically linked to sexuality for LGB for sure. And it is intrinsically linked to gender for trans people. But that does mean that I think it should be an opportunity for us to express the diversity of sexuality that exists. And parents can deal with that from their children's perspectives however they choose to. They could call this fancy dress if they want, right? That's what I always say. If a kid asks, why is that man wearing a dog hood? Oh, he's dressed like he's going on Halloween. Oh, okay. Move on.
If that's what you want to explain to them, that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like I may have hijacked that question slightly, but I really I was hoping to get that point across. So I hope that's
Well,
okay.
and I agree with you with kink and everything because I know down here I'm a board member of the Orlando Leather Pride, and we're participating in the parade this year. And we always do a puppy crawl through the festival. So even before the parade starts, we all gather at one location and we just walk from one end of the
Mm.
festival and back, just so they see us being present in the festival.
Love it. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. That's
Well,
brilliant. And when I was at my local Pride last year, I was the only pup, and there were some Leathermen from Leathermen Cymru. Cymru is Welsh for Wales, right? So Leathermen Wales, and they sort of adopted me, and I marched in the parade with them. It was really nice. And funnily enough, I was just in a gay bar the other day, and I was chatting to this guy. He was wearing just like normie clothes, and then I added him on Instagram, and it turned out he was Mr. Leather Hero. And when I saw that, I was wearing my puppet, and I was just like, I just went down onto my knees. I was like, because I was so
yeah.
excited to be like, Leatherman royalty kind of.
Well, how is it that you celebrate Pride, and what does it mean for you to participate in it?
Sorry, could you ask me that question again? I didn't
Yeah,
catch it.
yeah. How do you celebrate? How do you celebrate Pride, and what does it mean to you to be a participant in the festival instead of just on the sidelines watching?
Mm, that's a really good question. So I've had the privilege and the honor to march in a couple of parades in the last few years as a pup. So that has been amazing for me to be in it rather than on the outside.
Hmm.
But having said that, when I've been an observer of a pride parade, I kind of felt the same as I did when I was participating, and I think that's a really important point. When I have just because I know people who organize Pride now, so and I'm involved in puppy groups, and if the puppy groups are in the parade, I'll be in the parade, right? And that's because I'm quite involved in my community now.
Yeah.
But even when I was on the sidelines watching, as the parade went by, I didn't feel like I was excluded. And I think that's the key point about Pride for me is that I have never felt that a Pride event has excluded me. So this is why I said to you earlier, I'd love it if we could live Pride every day
Yes.
because Pride is a day in the life of a city or a town when we all, either the people who hold really strong bigotry and hold really strong anti-LGBT views, either they're just not there on the day, or they somehow sort of suspend their disbelief and they forget for a day because there's a lovely celebration happening and they want to get involved. I don't know whether they all go on vacation or whether they just forget that they hate us for a day. But on those days on those times when I've not been in the parade, I haven't felt like it's any less. And I think that's the key takeaway for me from Pride. And that I would want, if I was organizing a Pride, I would want to find a way of fostering that sense of being in it, even if you're not part of it. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Yeah.
Okay. Well, in your view, how can Pride help to create positive change going forward?
We need to do it. We need to do more of what we're doing, and we need to do it even louder. We need to do it even more clearly.
Yeah.
And I was on another podcast recently, and this podcast is called the Central Club Podcast. And the ethos of the guy who runs it is that he wants to give different voices opportunities to speak. So, one week you might have someone who's, on the right, the next week you might have someone who's on the left. One week you might have a pup, the next week you might have an evangelical Christian. And he doesn't put them up against each other in a sort of conflict situation, but he does invite his subscribers to view different perspectives. And I think that somehow, and I don't know how, but somehow we as a kind of LGBT community at large, we need to find a way of understanding people who are on the other side of the social spectrum to us, on the other side of the political spectrum to us. Because
Yes.
what I see happening over the last few years is that I feel like we've lost the debate, right? Temporarily at least. I feel like we're losing the argument in society. When a majority of voters in the US would vote for your current president, I I feel like something has gone wrong in the way that we are communicating with people who are on the margins of our views of the world, right?
Yeah.
So even as I say we need to dial it up and talk louder, I also think somehow, not just as Pride, but as a community as a whole, we need to find ways of listening better and seeking to understand what motivates people to want to take away our rights. Because only if we understand them can we then either reconcile with them or fight the hell out of it,
Yeah.
We need to, and I don't know whether Pride is a vehicle for that. I feel like it might be because it is a day when cities and towns become very inclusive. So perhaps there could be, just this one thing that I've seen done in the past is kind of these thinking spaces where you have kind of debates and discussions of prides. Perhaps we need to start inviting more challenging people into those, right? So that we actually have some debate going on rather than all talking from the same, singing from the same hymn
Yeah.
sheet. We actually invite challenge in, and maybe we change their minds. Maybe they help us understand them a little bit more. But I feel like within Pride and within the LGBT community, we're pretty good at understanding each other. My worry is that we don't actually have a clue what people outside of our community think. And that's a worry because they seem to be winning at the moment.
Yeah, they really do. So, well, what message do you think Pride sends to our future generations of our LGBTQ plus people, or to anybody really?
So I think I think it will be looked at. I think Pride itself will be looked at in the future as a positive. I think it comes from the right place. It's delivered in a way that is inclusive. The fact that, like I said, I can feel the same whether I'm participating or watching. That's an amazing achievement for an event like that to have created. Um, I think that the message it sends is we are here. We were here. This talking about your future selves. We were here, and there have been people like you throughout history. And whereas in history, people like us have been hidden, no one can look back at the early 21st century and late 20th century and say, "Yeah, gay people didn't really exist back then." My husband does LGBT history, and he will encounter historians who say, "Well, you can't call them gay. You can't say they were part of the LGBT community because we don't know for sure." Nobody could say that about us, about this generation and the previous generation and the next generation. Pride is our signal to the future that we were here and we were doing what we could to make a difference for you.
That's right. That's right. Well, Pup Luca, it's been awesome getting to, talk to you, catch up, learn a little bit about you and what Pride means to you. Any last words you have before we sign off?
My last words, I'm always terrible at last words because I tend to just riff away. But so like, I'm fine if I'm not put on the spot, but now I'm on the spot. But what I will say is, whatever flag you fly, whether it's this, whether it's Progress Pride flag, whether it's another flag, fly it with pride because actually, whatever identity you have, you will be sharing it with other people as well. So they will find you through your flag if not through other ways. So fly your flag with pride.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. It's been awesome getting to sit here and talk to you, and I know it won't be the last time we talk.